A millionaire asked his daughter to choose a new mother from among 5 wealthy women, but he chose the black cleaning lady when he discovered the truth about who really took care of the girl. "This woman shouldn't even be in the same room as us," Victoria Ashworth whispered to the other candidates as she watched Kesha Williams silently clean up the crystal shards on the marble floor of the Blackwood mansion. The glass had been accidentally knocked over during lunch by the 5 socialites competing to become the new wife of millionaire widower David Blackwood. Kesha, 28, had been working at the imposing Atlanta mansion for only 3 months, but she had already completely transformed the life of 7-year-old Emma, who had lost her mother in a car accident the previous year. If the girl didn't choose today, everything she loved would be torn from her. The law was clear, the deadline unshakable. For months, her father had pleaded, searched, and bargained with time, but now it had run out. And so, under the sharp eyes of strangers, the little girl found herself trapped in a decision no child should ever face: who would become her new mother. The clock ticked loudly in her mind, heavier than the hush of the room. She was only 9, yet in this moment she carried a burden greater than most adults ever would. 5 women waited, elegant and poised, their perfect smiles sharpened like knives hidden beneath velvet. Their fortunes glittered, their dresses shimmered, and each of them radiated confidence that this fragile child would choose them. But the girl's heart pounded with something else. Not admiration, not gratitude, but fear. None of these women felt like home. None of them carried the warmth she had once known, before her real mother's laughter had faded into silence. Yet her father, a man of unimaginable wealth and influence, stood behind her with hopeful eyes, willing her to choose. He believed this was the only way to keep his daughter safe, and perhaps to soothe his own loneliness. She swallowed hard, her gaze darting from one elegant figure to the next. The women shifted, one crossing her jeweled arms, another brushing invisible dust off her gown. Each of them believed she was the obvious choice. After all, who could resist power, beauty, and prestige? But the little girl did not move. She did not smile. She did not reach out her hand. Instead, she whispered words so quiet they almost vanished in the air. "I can't." The father's chest tightened. The silence stretched unbearably. To him, it felt like the walls themselves were leaning closer, pressing the decision upon them. His fortune could buy him anything, yet it could not purchase the one thing he now needed most: his daughter's trust. The women began to murmur softly, their confidence wavering. "She's shy," one said, forcing a gentle laugh. "She'll come around." Another leaned forward with polished grace, whispering, "Sweetheart, you don't have to be afraid. I'll take care of you." But the girl stepped back, shaking her head. Her little fists clenched at her side. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wanted her father to understand, to see what she saw, that love was not hiding in those painted smiles. And then, just as the tension threatened to snap, the child's eyes shifted, past the silk gowns and diamond ring, past the posturing and fake kindness. Her gaze drifted toward the far corner of the hall, where someone stood almost invisible, as if they had no right to exist among such glittering company. The housekeeper. She was a black woman in her early 40, dressed in her plain uniform, hands clasped nervously in front of her. She hadn't been invited to stand with the others. She had been cleaning when the meeting began, quietly slipping into the background as though her presence didn't matter. Her shoes were worn, her hair pulled back simply, and her face carried the lines of long hours and endless work. Yet in her eyes there was something the others did not have: sincerity. The girl saw it instantly, as though a hidden light had cut through the shadows. And for the first time that day, she smiled. Her father noticed, his brows knit together. "Darling," he asked cautiously, trying to guide her back to the row of waiting women. But she had already begun to move. Tiny footsteps echoed across the marble floor, past gowns worth more than entire homes, past the perfume and jewels, past the anticipation that now curdled into disbelief. The girl walked straight to the housekeeper and slipped her small hand into the woman's callous one. A gasp rippled through the room. The father's breath caught in his throat. The wealthy women froze, their practiced expressions cracking like porcelain under the weight of confusion and insult. One of them scoffed aloud, unable to hide her outrage. Another's painted smile turned brittle, her eyes narrowing as though she had been tricked. But the girl's voice, steady and clear, broke through the silence. "I choose her." The words fell like thunder in the hall. For a moment, no one moved. The housekeeper herself stood paralyzed, her wide eyes darting from the child to the father, then to the glittering women who now looked as though they might combust from fury. Her hands trembled, yet she squeezed the little girl's fingers instinctively, the way she had done countless times when she found her crying alone in the hallways. The father's lips parted, but no words came. His mind spun. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had lined up the finest women's society could offer. housekeeper, heirs to fortunes, socialites with influence, women who could secure his family's name for generations. But his daughter had bypassed all of them for the one person no one had considered. Murmurs turned into sharp whisper. Is this a joke? One of the women snapped. Surely she doesn't mean it. Another hissed. She's confused. This child doesn't know what she's saying. But the girl tightened her grip on the housekeeper's hand and repeated, louder this time, with the fierce determination of someone far older than her years. I choose her. The housekeeper's throat went dry. Her heart raced as she looked at the father, who now stood caught between disbelief and something else, something deeper. For in that moment, as he saw his daughter's eyes filled with certainty, he realized something he had ignored for too long. This woman, though unseen by the world, had always been there. She had been the one to wipe away his daughter's tears when grief consumed her. She had been the one to braid her hair, to whisper bedtime stories when the nights were long and lonely, while the wealthy women only saw an opportunity. This housekeeper had already been a mother in all the ways that mattered. The father's chest rose and fell, torn between reason and instinct. He could already feel the storm gathering outside the doors, the media, the criticism, the disbelief that a billionaire would allow his heir to choose a maid as her mother. Yet as he looked at his daughter's trembling smile, something inside him shifted. But the wealthy women were not done. This is absurd, one of them spat, her diamond necklace trembling against her collarbone as her voice rose. You can't possibly allow this farce to stand. She staffed. The others nodded vigorously, their indignation growing. What would people say? Do you want to humiliate your family? Do you want your daughter raised by someone with no education, no pedigree? The housekeeper lowered her gaze, her heart sinking. She had never expected this, never dreamed of it. And now, under the fiery glares of women far more powerful than her, she felt herself shrinking back into the shadows where she had always been kept. She gently tried to pull her hand away, whispering, "Sweetheart, you don't have to do this. I'm just..." But the girl clung tighter. "No, I want you." The words pierced through the noise like a blade. The housekeeper's eyes welled with tears, her lips trembling as she looked at the little girl, this child who saw her not as a servant, but as family. The father's mind roared with conflict. He could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on him. Yet another part of him, a quieter, truer part, whispered that perhaps his daughter understood something he did not. Perhaps she saw beyond the illusions of wealth and reputation, beyond the glittering facades, to the heart of what family really meant. The silence stretched once more, thick and suffocating. Every eye was on him, now waiting. The daughter's hand in the housekeeper, the women's fury simmering, the staff in the corners, frozen, unsure if they had just witnessed the end of everything they knew. And then the father spoke, his voice low, uncertain, but carrying the weight of decision. "Why?" he asked softly, his eyes fixed on his daughter. The little girl turned to him, her voice trembling but steady. "Because she already loves me." The words shattered him. The room spun, voices rose again, and the father felt the world tipping beneath his feet. For the first time in years, he questioned everything, his wealth, his status, his choices. And as his daughter stood defiantly with the woman no one else valued, he realized this moment would change everything. The silence didn't last. The moment the child word, "Because she already loves me," drifted to the marble hall, the room exploded into chaos. The women surged forward, their heels clicking sharply against the floor, their polished voices rising in outrage. "This is madness," one of them cried, her jeweled hand slicing the air as though she could cut away the very idea. "Unacceptable!" Another snapped, her eyes flashing like steel. "You cannot allow this. Think of your reputation, your family name." The father stood frozen, his jaw tight, his daughter's small voice echoing in his mind. He wanted to silence the shouting, to restore order, but the storm was beyond his control. The women weren't just insulted, they were threatened. This wasn't about a child's choice anymore. It was about power, about being dismissed for someone they deemed beneath them. The housekeeper shifted uneasily, her hand still clutched by the girl. Her throat tightened, her palms damp with fear. She had never wanted to stand in this spotlight, never wanted to invite such venom. All her life, she had lived in the quiet shadow, doing her work with dignity, never daring believe she could belong among people like this. "Sweetheart," she whispered softly, trying again to ease her hand free. "You're making a mistake. I can't be your mother." "I'm not." But the little girl cut her off, gripping tighter. "You are. You already are." The word struck her heart like a hammer, breaking through years of silence, years of invisibility. Tears threatened to spill, but she blinked them back, terrified that her weakness would only feed the scorn around her. The father finally raised a hand, his voice rough with tension. "Enough." The women stilled, though their fury simmered just beneath their polished masks. Their eyes bored into him, daring him to agree with his daughter, daring him to humiliate them all. He exhaled slowly, then turned to the girl. Darling, this choice isn't simple. It isn't just about what you want. It's about love, she interrupted firmly. Her small voice carried with surprising strength, silencing even the most defiant of the women. Mom always told me love is what makes a family. Not dresses, not money, not parties. Love. The father flinched at the mention of his late wife. Her absence still burned in his chest. A wound wealth could never heal. And now, hearing his daughter echo her mother's wisdom, he felt something unravel inside him. But the women pressed forward again, unwilling to yield. You'll be a laughingstock, one sneered. The media will destroy you, another added coldly. You think investors, partners, friends will respect you if you let your daughter choose her? The word dripped with venom, as though the housekeeper was not a human being, but a stain. The father's face hardened. He looked at the housekeeper, who stood trembling but upright, her back straight despite the insult. And in that moment, he saw her clearly, not as a staff who faded into the background, not as a burden, but as a woman of quiet strength. Still, doubt gnawed at him. Could he really do this? Could he allow his empire, his carefully built world, to be torn apart by a child's choice? The housekeeper saved him from answering. Her voice, low and steady, cut through the noise. Sir, she said softly, this isn't right. Your daughter is young, and she doesn't understand the weight of what she's saying. I've only ever done my job. Nothing more. Please, don't let her decision cause trouble for your family. The father's chest ached. Her humility only deepened his conflict. She wasn't fighting for status, wasn't reaching for wealth. She was pulling herself back, sacrificing her own chance at love to protect him. But his daughter would not let go. No, she cried, her voice trembling now with desperation. I don't want them. I want her. She makes me feel safe. She makes me feel like Mom's still here. The room fell silent again, her words echoing off the cold walls. For the father, the choice was no longer abstract. It was staring him in the face, in the tear-streaked cheeks of his daughter, and the quiet dignity of the woman she clung to. He could uphold the expectations of the world, or he could honor the truth his daughter already knew. Family was not chosen by wealth, but by love. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and when he opened them again, the decision was clear. She stays, he said firmly. The words dropped like stones into water. The women erupted in fury, their protests rising like a wave. But the father silenced them with a single look, sharp, unyielding, the kind of gaze that had built empires. This is my family, he said, his voice steady, and I will not let anyone dictate it for me. The housekeeper gasped softly, her knees threatening to give way. She couldn't believe it. After all the years of invisibility, of being nothing more than hands that scrubbed floors and washed dishes, she was being seen, truly seen. The little girl threw her arms around her waist, burying her face against the fabric of her uniform, and for the first time, the housekeeper let her tears fall. But the battle was far from over. Within hours, the story spread like wildfire. Headlines blazed across screen. Billionaire heir chooses housekeeper as new mother. Paparazzi swarmed the gates, cameras flashing as though the mansion itself were ablaze. Reporters shouted questions, microphones shoved forward, demanding answers. The wealthy women, humiliated and scorned, fanned the flames, feeding the media with venomous remark. It's a disgrace, one declared to cameras. He's throwing away his legacy for charity. Another sneered, he's blinded by grief. This woman isn't fit to raise a child in that world. The father watched it unfold with clenched fists, fury simmering beneath his calm exterior. He had faced boardroom wars, corporate scandals, hostile takeovers, but never this. Never the world clawing at the very core of his family. The housekeeper, meanwhile, felt crushed by the weight of it all. She had never asked for attention, never asked to be thrust into the spotlight. Now strangers dissected her life, her worth, her past. Every mistake she'd ever made was dragged out, twisted, broadcast to the world to sneer at. One night, unable to bear it, she approached the father quietly. I should leave, she whispered, her voice breaking. This is destroying everything you built. Your daughter, she'll suffer because of me. But he shook his head. No, she chose you. And I will stand by that. I've spent my life chasing power, but none of it means anything if I fail her now. Her tears fell freely then, because she finally believed him. The weeks that followed were brutal. Lawsuits threatened, investors withdrew, tabloids mocked him mercilessly. The father's empire trembled on the edge of collapse. But through it all, one truth held firm. The little girl never let go of the housekeeper's hand. And slowly, the world began to see what she had seen all along. They saw the way the housekeeper brushed the girl's hair with patience and tenderness. The way she whispered encouragement before school. The way she stood beside the father, not as a gold digger or opportunist, but as a steady, humble presence. The narrative began to shift. Commentators who once mocked now spoke of courage, of love defying class and prejudice. Ordinary families wrote letters of support, sharing how they too had found love in unexpected unexpected places. The father, once terrified of losing everything, realized he gained something greater than all his billion, a family reborn. Months later, on a quiet morning, the housekeeper stood at the edge of the garden, watching the little girl chase butterflies across the lawn. The father joined her, his suit jacket draped loosely over his arm. "She's happy again," he murmured. The housekeeper smiled faintly. "She deserves to be." He glanced at her, his eyes soft. "So do you." Their gazes lingered, and for the first time, she felt the possibility of something she had never allowed herself to imagine, not just belonging, but being loved in return. The little girl ran back, breathless, her laughter ringing like bells. She grabbed their hand, pulling them together. "See," she grinned, "we're a family now." And as they stood there, hand in hand beneath the morning sun, the father realized a truth he should have known all along. Love was the only legacy worth leaving.